Have you ever stopped to think that behind Gemini's light smile and vibrant energy lies a burden that never fades? This sign, considered the most communicative and versatile of the zodiac, carries within itself silent karmas that shape every decision, every relationship, and even every word it speaks. Gemini can charm crowds, adapt to any environment, and always seem ahead of the curve. But the truth is that it lives with an inner burden that few can see. Between the duality that never finds, peace, the words that spill out uncontrollably, and the relentless pursuit of novelty, there's a hidden emptiness that haunts its soul. Today, you'll discover the 5 karmas that Gemini always carries within itself, truths that reveal the dark side of this much misunderstood sign. And I must warn you, the last one, number 5, is the most impactful of all, and it will shock you. 1. The eternal duality. The first karma Gemini carries is its eternal duality. No other sign lives as divided between extremes as it does. To outsiders, this characteristic may seem merely curious or even amusing. Gemini is 2 people in one, they say. But for those who truly live with this burden within themselves, the story is different. This duality isn't just a matter of mood swings or sudden changes of heart. It's a silent weight, an internal battle that never ends. Imagine waking up every day with 2 distinct voices competing for space in your mind. One that desires security, stability, and lasting bonds, and another that calls for freedom, novelty, and constant movement. This is the battleground that Gemini carries in their hearts. There is never complete silence. There is always the feeling that in choosing one path, they are inevitably abandoning another. And this perception brings a constant feeling of loss, even in moments of victory. Gemini's duality manifests itself in all aspects of life. In love, they can give themselves intensely one moment and, the next, feel like disappearing. At work, they can be brilliant at initiating projects, full of innovative ideas, but often feel stifled by routine and seek new horizons. Among friends, they are the link between different groups, always moving between distinct worlds, but rarely finding a place where they truly belong. This karma of duality also places them in situations of constant judgment. Others see them as fickle, incapable of keeping their word. But no one realizes that behind this image lies a real pain. That of wanting to be many things at once and feeling that they can never be whole in any of them. For Gemini, every decision brings with it a ghost, the ghost of what they didn't choose. This shadow silently accompanies them, whispering, "What if you had done things differently? What if that other path was the right one?" The weight of this karma is that, amid so many possibilities, Gemini can lose themselves. They run the risk of living more for others, conforming to expectations, than for their true essence. And although they shine with their intelligence and versatility, they often feel empty because they can't anchor themselves in something that gives them a sense of completeness. But this karma isn't just a curse. It's also a lesson. Gemini's duality exists to teach about balance. It's an invitation for Gemini to understand that they don't need to nullify one side to experience the other, but rather that they can integrate their facets in harmony. Only when Gemini accepts their inherent diversity can they find peace. And this learning is painful, because it requires them to look in the mirror and face the chaos they carry within, unmasked. This is the eternal Gemini duality, living divided, feeling incomplete, yet simultaneously discovering that this very multiplicity is what makes one unique. Gemini's karma is to walk between extremes, learning to live with one's own contradictions, and, in the midst of this battle, transform chaos into wisdom. 2. The superficiality that hurts. The second karma Gemini carries is the mark of superficiality. From an early age, they learn that their restless nature and ability to adapt to any environment can be misinterpreted. To many, Gemini seems too light, too shallow, as if they lack emotional depth or the capacity for true commitment. This is one of the greatest pains that accompanies them, being constantly judged as someone who doesn't feel when in fact they do, and feel deeply. The superficiality others see is actually a reflection of their need for movement. Gemini thinks quickly, speaks quickly, and changes interests frequently, because their mind is like a flowing river, never still, never resting. But this doesn't mean they're incapable of diving deep. On the contrary, at times, they carry intense feelings and deep reflections that they reveal to almost no one. The problem is that in the rush of their words and actions, few perceive this hidden dimension. And this is karma, living between who they truly are and what others believe them to be. To outsiders, Gemini appears uncommitted, someone who enjoys everything but takes nothing seriously. However, inside, they suffer because their true depth is rarely recognized. This feeling of being misunderstood accompanies them in relationships, friendships, and even family. They can give of themselves, care, and get emotional, but still hear that they don't go deep, that they live only on the surface. This pain increases in romantic relationships. How many Geminis have been accused of not loving enough, of not giving themselves body and soul? But what few understand is that their way of loving is dynamic, full of expression and curiosity. It shows itself through enthusiasm, words, and an interest in sharing ideas. But because this love isn't always imbued with constancy or dramatic intensity, it ends up being seen as shallow. And nothing hurts Gemini more than having their emotional commitment invalidated. The karma of superficiality also leaves him feeling empty. After all, if no one recognizes his depth, does it really exist? This silent doubt can erode his self-esteem and cause him to lose himself in social masks. To avoid criticism, he often prefers to embody the role expected of him: the fun-loving, the easygoing, the one who never wavers. But when the party ends and silence sets in, he feels the weight of not having shown his true self. This mark forces Gemini to grapple with an identity wound between the image of being fickle and their inner truth of being someone who desires real connections. The lesson hidden in this karma is precisely to allow themselves to be profound even when the world doesn't expect it. Gemini needs to understand that it's not their responsibility to be judged by others, but rather to live their own authenticity. The superficiality that hurts deep down is a call for courage. Courage to show your depth without fear of rejection. Courage to say what you truly feel, even if it makes you vulnerable. Courage to free yourself from the too light role and admit that you too have strong roots, intense pain, and emotions that run deep. Only then can you transform this karma into strength. In the end, Gemini isn't superficial, they're multiple. And it's precisely this multiplicity that makes them special. But until they accept this and show their full selves, they'll continue to carry the pain of being seen as someone who never truly dives in. 3. The weight of words. The third. Karma Gemini carries lies in their most powerful weapon: words. From an early age, this sign discovers that their voice has an unusual power. It convinces, charms, entertains, manipulates situations, and opens doors. With just a few sentences, they can capture the attention of an entire room. But this gift comes at a high price, because just as it can heal and unite, their tongue can also cut and wound. Gemini talks fast, thinks fast, and often doesn't consider the consequences of what they say. They're the ones who say something jokingly and only realize too late that they've deeply hurt someone they love. They're the ones who make enthusiastic promises but then fail to back up their words, leaving others feeling disappointed. And this is one of their greatest karmas: living trapped by the impact of their own words. Behind the laughter and charisma lies a heart filled with regret. Gemini often revisits past conversations in his mind, recalling phrases he uttered in the heat of the UI moment. Apparently, he's already moved on. But in the silence of the night, his conscience reminds him of what he caused. This invisible weight follows his path, as if it were a collection of echoes of everything that came out of his unfiltered mouth. The karma of words also condemns them to being misunderstood. How many times has Gemini wanted to express genuine feelings, but their sentences came out distorted, transforming tenderness into irony or love into instability? They know that within them lies an ocean of emotions, but the way they communicate doesn't always reflect this truth. And so, the world judges them by the surface of their words, without seeing the depth of their intentions. This burden is even more cruel in relationships. Loving a Gemini often means living with this oscillation between beautiful speeches and thoughtless ones. They can write messages that touch the soul, but they can also, in a moment of impatience, blurt out a phrase that opens irreversible wounds. And then, they carry regret like a suffocating weight, knowing there's no way to undo what was said. For Gemini, this karma is a lesson in responsibility. They need to learn that their voice is not only a tool of charm, but also of destruction. They need to understand that not every word needs to be said, that silence is sometimes wiser than any speech. But learning this isn't easy, because their mind is always in motion, and the need to express themselves seems uncontrollable. The weight of their words also reveals their greatest vulnerability, their difficulty in being taken seriously. Because they talk so much, because they sometimes contradict themselves, Gemini feels that people doubt their truth. They carry the stigma of being the one who talks too much, and this hurts them deeply, because their words aren't always just games. Often, they are cries from their soul asking to be understood. This karma shows him that gift and curse go hand in hand. The same talent that elevates him can destroy him if used without awareness. Ultimately, Gemini needs to understand that every word carries energy, and this energy never disappears. It only transforms and returns to him in some form. The lesson hidden in this karma is simple, yet profound. Think before you speak. Choose words that uplift, rather than merely impress. Use your voice not as a weapon of momentary conquest, but as a legacy of truth and authenticity. Until you learn this, you will continue to carry the silent weight of everything you've ever said, and that can never be unsaid. 4. The endless search for novelty. The fourth karma that Gemini carries is endless restlessness, the eternal search for the new. To others, it may seem like mere curiosity, a playful trait of someone who is never content with little. But for Geminis themselves, this insatiable thirst is a silent cross that accompanies every stage of life. Gemini is driven by novelty. They thrive on different experiences, people who challenge their minds and paths they've never traveled before. Their heart races at the prospect of discovering something new. However, soon after the initial enchantment, emptiness sets in. What once seemed fascinating loses its color, and suddenly they feel the need to seek another source of stimulation. This endless cycle is what traps them in an invisible wheel that never stops turning. This karma manifests itself in every area. In love, Gemini can fall in love intensely, immersed in promises, but soon feel like there's no longer enough novelty. At work, they may start brilliant projects, but abandon them when routine sets in. In their social life, they may surround themselves with many people, but feel that none of them alone can keep them engaged for long. It's as if their soul is always hungry, and nothing is ever enough. The weight of this quest is that Gemini rarely feels complete. No matter how much experience, travel, friendships, and stories they accumulate, there's always an inner whisper saying, "What if there's something more out there? What if you're missing out on the best part by staying here?" This fear of missing out prevents them from appreciating what they've already achieved, and little by little, it can transform their life into a succession of beginnings without continuity, without roots. The karma of newness also leaves Gemini feeling guilty. After abandoning something or someone, they may look back and realize they missed something valuable, something that could have borne fruit if they'd been patient. But when they try to go back, it's often too late. What they left behind is no longer there. And this regret is a ghost that haunts them, reminding them that constant pursuit also has a price. Deep down, this restlessness hides an existential void. Gemini seeks outside what they need to find within. They believe the next new thing will bring lasting satisfaction, but when the euphoria wears off, they realize that nothing external can fill that void. This is the darkest point of their karma, realizing that true fulfillment lies not in what comes from outside, but in what is built within. Learning this karma is hard, but essential. Gemini needs to understand that novelty doesn't always mean changing direction, but rather looking at what they already have with fresh eyes. They need to learn that constancy can also be a source of pleasure, that delving deeper into something or someone can reveal infinite worlds, vaster than any superficial change. Until you accept this, you will continue to live like a wanderer without a destination, accumulating rootless memories and carrying the pain of never feeling fully satisfied. The endless search for the new is, in fact, a mirror that forces you to face the emptiness you carry within. Only when you accept this truth will you be able to transform your restlessness into wisdom and your insatiable thirst into genuine creation. Before we reveal the final Gemini karma, the darkest of all, I want to ask you something important. If you've made it this far, it's because this content spoke to you in some way. So leave a like to support the channel and subscribe so you don't miss future videos, because we still have many dark secrets about the signs to reveal. And take the opportunity to comment below. Have you ever noticed any of these karmas in a Gemini you know, or even in yourself? I want to read about your experience. 5. The hidden void. Number 5 will shock you. Of all the karmas Gemini carries, this is the most silent and the most painful. Behind the easy smiles, sparkling conversation, and a spirit always ready to liven up any room, lies an emptiness few can perceive. This is the hidden weight of their soul, the disguised loneliness, the inner hole that insists on remaining even when surrounded by people. Gemini knows how to shine in public. They can be the center of attention, tell stories, draw laughter, and keep the energy in the room high. But when the party ends and the lights go out, the fall comes. In the silence of their room, they often feel a strange disconnect, as if all that brilliance were just a fleeting reflection, incapable of warming their inner self. This contrast between apparent joy and inner emptiness is the greatest karma they carry. Gemini's emptiness stems from his restless mind. He thinks too much, questions too much, dreams too much. And the more his mind races, the harder it is to find rest. He searches for something to fill this void in people, in new things, in projects. But nothing seems to last. Everything quickly loses its color, and soon the feeling that nothing is truly enough sets in. It's as if he carries a never-ending hunger. This karma also makes him feel misunderstood. After all, who would believe that someone so communicative, so full of life, could feel lonely? Those around him expect him to always be lighthearted, fun, and carefree. But deep down, Gemini struggles with a profound loneliness, feeling that few see, beyond the surface. He talks a lot, but is rarely heard when it comes to what truly matters. The hidden emptiness is also a consequence of their own duality. Gemini lives between two forces, and this creates the feeling of never being whole anywhere. Even when they're with someone, they may feel like there's a missing part of themselves that no one can reach. It's as if there's always an invisible half crying out for attention. The darkest side of this karma is that, in their attempt to escape the void, Gemini can lose themselves in endless distractions, empty conversations, superficial experiences, fleeting relationships, all to drown out the silence they carry within. But the more they run from the void, the more it grows. Until the moment comes when there's nowhere to escape, they must face it head-on. This is the painful lesson of this karma. Understanding that emptiness is not an enemy, but a calling. It is in this that Gemini discovers who they truly are, beyond words, beyond social roles, beyond the mask of joy. It is when they accept silence and learn to live with their own essence that they find the strength to transform this emptiness into creativity, wisdom, and authenticity. What's shocking about this fifth karma is realizing that Gemini's greatest pain comes not from others, but from themselves. From the inner space that needs to be filled not with applause, but with truth. Not with new things, but with roots. Not with more voices around, but with the courage to listen to their own. This is Gemini's dark secret. Behind the vibrant energy lies a soul struggling with emptiness. And only when they learn to accept it as part of their journey do they finally find peace.